Opinion on JonBenét, Wonderland Murders, Idaho killings.
Someone killed this 6-year-old child.
The Wonderland Massacre. It plays out beneath the bright lights of Hollywood.
He wrote the book on it. He knows everything about the case, and he got it on camera. He chased John Holmes, the porn star.
You're not the media, you're the cop, and you do your job.
Let's get Nash. Let's get this guy in jail. Let's make him do some time.
I think it was hot shot.
25 people were killed in this fire.
He poured this gasoline on the mat and lit it on fire. They were burned alive. It was a firebox ready to explode.
Well over 300 victims.
Nobody cares about the people on Skid Row. It was just me and a clipboard and a body. You still have them out there.
The old lady killer, in 2 years, 34 victims.
This is just L.A. Cops had to learn the hard way. Empathy is going to go with the young girls. Kearney is a necrophiliac. He'd shoot him in the head, then have sex with the body. People were screaming and women were crying.
All right, welcome everybody. One Degree of Scandalous. I'm Tom Zenner on Tom Zenner Scandal YouTube channel, and we have been so lucky to have Tom Lange join us for 4 episodes. This is number 4. We're going to wrap up the Wonderland Murders. Some more juicy details. We're going to put a bow on this. I'm also going to ask Tom about some cases that I know a lot of our fans and viewers want to know his opinion on. JonBenét, Idaho killings, maybe the Menendez brothers. So we're going to talk about that as well. And we're also going to go through a long list of some of the biggest serial killing stories and cases here in Los Angeles. A lot of them Tom was involved in. So that's part of it. With me, as always, the one and only...
I'm sorry, Tom. I'm reading
Cato
Tom's
Kalin.
book. This is Malice in Wonderland, Chapter 3, Buckets of Blood. You guys do the show. I'm going to read. This is great. Tom, no pictures? Come on. This is Cato.
Cato, he wrote the book on it. He knows
love it.
everything
It's so
about the
great.
case.
So,
And
Tom, as you know, Tom Lange obviously is amazing. And Tom and I always talk about that, how your detail, how you keep notes, and you're just on the ball. And when you said your birthday is coming up, we said it doesn't matter. You're always a young man and this stuff because you just, like I said, your attention to detail. And Tom, we ended up not finding out about Eddie Nash in the book, what happened.
Exactly.
And I want to know because I waited a week to hear.
we kind of left everybody on a cliffhanger. So go back to our recent episode with Tom about the Wonderland Murders. We have all the details in it. Tom, for the first time, recorded a crime scene. So if you haven't seen that, he walked in there.
The original camcorder.
One of the most vicious and horrific crime scenes that anybody has ever seen. And he got it on camera.
Buckets of Blood, Chapter 3.
He chased John Holmes, the porn star, through his old neighborhood in Coral Gables, Florida, to catch him. And it's truly a story that you couldn't make it up. They tried to do a movie on it. It wasn't bad with Val Kilmer, but hearing it from Tom Lange, who was there for everything, is epic. So go back and watch it, and we're going to wrap up right now. Eddie Nash, the guy that owned the clubs, the kind of the nasty club dealer here, was cocaine dealer, invented crack cocaine. Boy, he had quite a resume. Sent his goons over to kill 4 people on the Wonderland street in the Hollywood Hills. And now let's wrap it up because Eddie Nash, John Holmes was arrested for murder. Tom found a palm print of his on the bed, which he probably used to level himself as he was using that lead pipe.
Yeah.
But Eddie Nash is the guy behind it all. And Tom, you kind of left us hanging that last time because John Holmes gets tried, shenanigans with the jury, which was prevalent throughout this entire saga. But did you feel confident that you could make Nash go down and pay for this in due time?
You have to feel confident if you have the evidence, or otherwise why even bother with it? Of course you think you're going to win going in there, but you never know what a jury's going to do. You never know what the court is going to rule on. All you can do is what you do. You present the evidence that you found, and you move on. Again, you're not the jury, you're not the judge, you're not the defense attorney or the prosecutor, you're not the media, you're nothing. You're the cop, and you do your job, and if you're satisfied with your job, then you move on. I've had trials that I've won, I've had trials that I've lost. It's just the way the mop flops, It didn't matter.
Yeah, Tom, and it's difficult because you're against the 8 ball. I mean, we saw that with the early trial, and we're going to find out about that. There's some factors that you couldn't control that was involved in this. Cato, I'm curious because you moved out to LA, about this time in the early 80s?
1980, I went to Cal State Fullerton. 81, I was in LA. So it was, God, I knew about this case. So, I mean, I because my parents were both alive at the time, and they were so worried about crime. because when you hear it in the news in Wisconsin and it's here, they think it's right next door. And it's like, Mom, Dad, I'm okay.
Right.
I'm okay.
Yeah, because
So
it seemed
it's-
random or whatever, but it wasn't. You know, they
Yeah.
targeted these guys. But sure, you're in the middle of this. But there were so many murders back then too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it was like I said, crime infested LA. And Tom, you're the one that told us that the most serial killings ever are in Los Angeles.
They come through Los Angeles, or they did in the late 70s, 80s, and into the 90s for some reason. Now, all of these, they go to different jurisdictions, but for whatever reason, they all came through LA. And I'm talking probably 23 or 24 serial killing cases, and they're not all singular suspects. Some of them were doubles. So we had the Freeway killing, there were 5 different suspects.
And I think one of the reasons, I'm not a detective, but you can tell me if I'm right, is because of weather. There's girls that can be on the street kind of year round, and a lot of the prostitutes were murdered in serial case killings.
I
But
put a list together once of different reasons the way they come in. It is the weather is one. Hitchhiking would be another one.
Right.
Great spot for, dump spots for bodies.
And LA just attracts people. It attracts people chasing the dream.
Yeah.
It attracts psychos. Everything. People kind of magnet here. So
and drugs.
I've
of
got a
course,
whole
the
list. We're going to
Holmes.
get to all these serial killings in just a second to back up Cato's point there. But so Tom, let's get Nash. Let's get this guy in jail. Let's make him do some time, right?
Yeah.
Let's get him for murder. 4 murders.
We got to the point where we were able to file a case with Ron Cohen, who's now a Superior Court judge. He was a DA at the time. And we're ready to go to trial. And we go to trial. He was tried with Greg Dials. The two of them were tried together with 2 separate juries, which was kind of unusual. When there was evidence as to Nash, the one jury was in there. Evidence as to Dials' jury was in there. Well, there's evidence for both juries were in there. This made it a little more difficult, but that's what the court ruled, and so that's what happened. As far as the first trial went with Ed Nash, it was a mistrial because it hung 11-1. I think we alluded to that in the last one.
Yep.
Come to find out sometime later, years later actually, that the one juror who held out was bought off by Ed Nash. She ends up in the witness protection program because her brother, who was supposed to make the payoffs, didn't pay the right people at the right time, and he ended up dead. She rolls over. At the time, she would refuse to deliberate with the other juror. The chairman of the jury went to the judge and explained that she wouldn't talk to them about evidence or anything else. She should have been recused. If she'd been recused,
It's 101, man.
alternate would have been appointed, and it would have been a conviction. But for some reason, the judge did not recuse her in light of what happened, and that's just the way things go. So he was retried
Sure.
and acquitted. Again, I think I already said this. How did he go from 11-1 for guilt to 12-0 for acquittal?
How did that happen? What was the reason?
Well, we know that a lot of people get paid off on these various things.
Isn't it
That's what happened to the first jury.
Unbelievable.
This Nash guy has got to be such a bad character, a guy
Well,
who can get the brother killed. Who I don't know if it's proven or not, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm just allegedly. I can
Nash
say.
didn't directly do that, but obviously this all comes from one person. It all comes from one
Command.
somebody making these decisions. The thing was, her brother was a gangbanger, so it wasn't when the deal was struck, it was for $70,000, and the guy who struck the deal was supposed to get a cut and didn't. He was the one that was in jail with Dials.
Yeah.
And so that was the payback.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he did the killing. So I
I get what you're saying, but with the bribe comes probably some threats. Like you'd be almost afraid not to take it. Like who knows? I know where your parents live. I know where your sister lives. These guys are capable of anything. So he's 0 for 2 on murder raps.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we get another dead body call up at Nash's house. One of his employees is found dead.
During the trial or after the trial?
This was before the trial. Wow. So we get a call one Sunday, and we go up there, and it comes to find out that it's one of his employees who has OD'd, supposedly, in the back room. He's taking some cocaine with a female who also ended up dead, Jamie McGuan. But this guy, young kid, 26 years old, Dino Fragamali. And we went to the location, and it had been cleaned up. I mean, the dishes were even going. even cleaned up out of the kitchen. The place was a mess usually.
Yeah.
We had served 3 warrants there, and now we got a dead body there. So everybody is saying, well, he OD'd. Well, the problem was that he was just about in full rigor mortis. Full rigor takes 8 to 12 hours for full rigor. So if he OD'd, why did it take so long to find him? I mean, he's right up there at the house with this young woman sleeping in the bed with him, and he'd been dead for a long time as due to the rigor mortis. I think he was hot-shotted because that's another way they get rid of somebody, and then clean up the house and call the cops when everything is.
So hot-shotted means that drugs have something in it will cause death.
Overdose. It was just an overdose, hot shot or overdose. And we think probably he pissed Nash off one way or the other, and that's how you'd get rid of him without doing a body dump or something simple. Say, oh, he OD'd. Well, why is he in full rigor then?
Nash doesn't have an HR department. He just takes care of him in the back of the house. Lead pipe, drug overdose. That's how he deals with his employee issues. Okay, so he's off on 2 murder raps. But then in 1999... you go after him again, right? For a RICO charge. Now, that's a federal charge.
Okay, no, I'd retired by then.
Okay.
I was contacted by a LAPD intelligence unit, and they were working with the federal task force. Nash was under indictment, again, with a bunch of people for a number of things, and they had, I believe it was 16-count RICO indictment. RICO, the organized crime statutes. One of them, or 2 of them, was, of course, Nash had been acquitted, so he can't be retried for the murder case. Mm-hmm. But what the feds did is one of the RICO counts was aiding and abetting the murders. So they added that count because he wasn't tried for aiding and abetting. Right. So they did it this time, and they put that count in there, 4 more counts of murder and 1 attempted murder of aiding and abetting. Yep. And they nailed him, along with 15 other counts. So he was set to go to trial on September the 10th, 2001.
Wow.
Get the
he
date.
Went into federal court.
September 10th, 2001?
Well, we're getting to there.
Yep.
September 10th, 2001, he goes into federal court in downtown L.A., and the press is there. Everybody is there. We're set for a big trial. I've been subpoenaed. I'm going to testify against him by this. My evidence is having to do with him and the murders, aiding and abetting. Comes in and he cops out to all 16 counts. Surprises everybody because everybody's ready to go to trial. He ends up getting 36 months at Club Fed. He does less than half of that. I think he'd only have 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I think 8 months at the most.
Yeah, something like that. He doesn't spend a lot of time. Anyway, the next day is, as we all know, 9/11. Ed Nash moves off of the headlines in a hurry, and that's the end. That's the end of everything this year. He goes to prison for a few months, and then he's out, and that's it.
That's it.
So it was very not a lot going on. It was just very disappointing to end something, a 20-year trial, a 20-year investigation, ending on that note, and it just goes away, and that's it.
Yep. He admitted to bribing the jury, too, during that RICO trial.
He admitted to the juror. That was one of the counts. Yeah. That was another one of the counts of the 16 counts, bribing the juror. And who knows what happened to her and her family. They went, like
witness
I said,
protection, but they could,
witness protection.
Someone might have found them. You never know.
We don't know.
Because if they die, you don't know it's her because of witness protection, correct?
I don't know how the feds would handle that. I'm assuming now that most people are gone, but I'll throw something in there. I don't believe most of the killers are gone. I believe there's still 1 or 2 out there.
Wow, still alive.
And
I think that's what Scott Thorson was thinking too.
Well, I've got good reason to believe it, and I won't even get into it.
Okay.
But Nash is dead.
Nash is dead. Riles is dead too.
When did Nash die?
He died in, I believe it was 2012.
Okay, so does Nash have family that
2014.
Took over did Nash have family that took over businesses for him, or was Nash no family at all?
No, he had family. He was divorced initially. He died, I think it was 86 when he died, so-called natural causes. He had no immediate family who was close to him. He had a lot of business people who did a lot of stuff for him.
Yeah.
Covered up a lot of stuff. So those clubs, they just, they folded.
Yeah, I was
He
going
had,
to say,
another-
everything disappeared.
A lot of it was handled by Hal Glickman, who Hal Glickman.
Real estate guy, right? Hal Glickman. I
No,
know
he
the
was involved with a couple of the clubs. He ran the Club Hollywood for a while. He was in prison for bribing a judge. That also happened in this case, where he did bribe Judge Everett Ricks, who cut Nash's dope sentence when those 3 cases were put together as one. He got 8 years, but he got called back in by Judge Ricks, who cut his sentence in half. He did about a year and a half to 2 years. It seems after that, Judge Ricks developed a cocaine habit, and he died, I believe, in 1993 or 94.
Can you
And
imagine?
Nash got out.
Can you how they go about bribing someone? How does do they meet with a judge? How do you go about
You know what?
saying, hey, here's some money?
You know
when
what,
they
Cato?
it's so
It turned out
illegal?
the judge was hooked on coke.
He was on coke, and he was
And
dependent
that's how
upon
you approached
Nash's
him?
people. Yeah. We
So-
said an intermediary, like in our case, they said an intermediary, which was a tired LA cop, someone you could identify with. And say he was a reasonable guy, and he reaches over and taps your arm and said, Tom, listen, this guy's really a good guy, and he's really getting screwed around. Just want to know that if there's he can do anything for you, just give me a call. That type of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I says, and I'll get the fuck out of my office.
He said that then.
No, I said that to him.
Oh, to you when he did that, but I'm saying when they do that same thing to a judge, that someone else might go.
Well, yeah,
"All right,
but
what-
this
what can I-"
judge was, like you said, he was addicted already.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, I gave you that 4-step procedure.
yeah, I get
And
that.
that's what they do, and we've had experience with those types of things in another case. I think we talked about
Yeah,
the last
and then
time.
you immediately know that guy that's doing that to you was a crooked.
Business.
Yeah.
Business is business. This
Yeah,
is how we do
but-
business. If you don't want it, then here's some money. If you don't want the money, well, you don't want number 3 or number 4.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that's just how it's done.
Boy, there isn't anything you haven't seen in your career. It's unbelievable. Let me ask you this question. You've been involved in these high-profile cases, OJ, Wonderland, dabbled in the Hillside Strangler. You had Skid Row Slasher and many others. How does the call get to you? When it's high-profile, do they come to you because you're senior, you have all this experience? Was some of it random too?
Well, in L.A., number one, if it's in the city limits. We have L.A. in the city limits. There's also L.A. County. Now, L.A. County has like 60 or 7, I believe it's 71 cities, small towns. Many of them have their own police departments. Of course, LAPD is probably the largest. We have citywide jurisdiction, and when I was on the job, they had 18 geographical divisions.
Okay.
Each one had its own homicide unit. We were a specialized division that had citywide jurisdiction, and we would handle specifically high-profile cases, serial killers, celebrity cases, cases that took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and preferably they like someone who is used to handling a lot of cases. And who is successful in doing that. Because when the media gets involved, that changes everything. Everything is changed, and you got to be aware of that. That's what the unit that I worked in, and there were, I believe, 16 of us total. And they would break up the cases as they came in. However, when there was a serial killing cases, we would usually have at least 4 teams on those cases. And like we were saying earlier, there's like 22 or 23 serial killer cases during a 20-year period. So everybody was quite busy, and not just with the serial killers, but you have all of these other cases, and they had a cumulative effect after a while. And I pointed it out in the book. I mean, you go from one to the next, and people are wanting results, and you can't always get them right away because you have a lot of things, and you have to prioritize what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cato, you moved to LA in the early 80s. Thank God you didn't move to the Dorothy Mae apartment building.
I checked them out. Horrible rent. They asked me to sleep in the lobby.
Well, it was a good
Why do you
thing
say
that you
that?
did it because
What happened?
this turned into one of the other big horrific cases that Tom Lange covered. I didn't even know about this. Tom told me about this. If you've been around and maybe you heard about this in the early 80s if you live in LA, but this is an incredible story. 25 people were killed in this fire. It was arson. The backstory is bizarre. Tom was able to track down the perpetrator of it. But Tom, this one, maybe didn't get quite the headlines. I'm sure at the time it did. I don't remember it. But this one's horrific. And you think of how these people died in a 3-story apartment building, and it just engulfed in flames. And a lot of these people had no chance. They either burned alive or they jumped to their death because there was no way to get out. So Tom, talk us through this one, how you got called to this, how you ended up there, and what you saw when you got there.
All right, September 1982, the Dorothy Mae was an older apartment building right on Sunset Boulevard, just off of Figueroa in downtown L.A. And there were a lot of aliens, a lot of Hispanic aliens living in this particular place. A lot of them were probably here, didn't have documentation, whatever. And it was run by a man who had a nephew living with him, living in the same apartment by the name of Umberto De La Torre, 19-year-old kid. Well, De La Torre was also a local gang member. And he was big with the graffiti, and he was several times he'd go back behind the Dorothy Mae and he'd spray graffiti, gang graffiti all over the apartment building. His uncle didn't like that, and when the kid wouldn't stop doing that, he got physical and just, kicked the crap out of the kid and said, no more of this, you've had it, and everything else. So the kid got upset, and one day went down to the corner there of Sunset and Figueroa where there was a service station and got a gallon of gas, walked back to the Dorothy Mae, and went to the front door of the uncle's apartment, who the uncle now was the manager. And there was a mat in front, and he poured this gasoline on the mat and lit it on fire. The fire began to spread. This is an old building with very dry wooden slats on the corridors. Just a matchbox type of situation.
Immediately.
Ironically, after the fire started to spread, the kid took off for the front door. The uncle came in the back door, and there was a draft that came in and a backdraft on the fire. It hit the fire, and it exploded in a backdraft situation. Flew down the hall, up a stairwell, down the second level, up another level, and down the next level.
Total coincidence that the uncle was walking in at that same point?
Total coincidence. And, of course, the uncle didn't know what to do. He didn't see the kid at the time, but he knew what had happened. So anyway, the entire place becomes engulfed. People panicked. They ran outside of their rooms, and many of them were just torched and burned alive. Several of them, like you said, were injured, and some died as they left from the windows, the open windows. The irony here is if they had stayed, those who died in the corridors were burned alive. If they had stayed in their buildings, in their apartments, they would have lived for at least 30, 40 minutes because, unbeknownst to them, recently the Dorothy Mae had been fitted with what they call pone doors, which is a fireproof door that gives you 30 to 40 minutes time. If the flames are at the door, you got about 30, 35 minutes before that door is going to come down. Pone doors were named after the Pone Fire in 1970 in downtown LA, a couple miles only from the Dorothy Mae, where 19 people were torched. So as a result of that, you had to have these fireproof doors put in, and they had them put in. Unfortunately for the people, they didn't know that, and they were burned alive. After this happened, the kid took off for Mexico down into a little village where his family was from and was hiding down there. And, of course, when he went back down to this little village deep into Mexico, he didn't tell the other folks there what had happened. There's no communication down there. They didn't know what happened. Ironically, if you want to say this ironically or tragically, 12 of the victims were his family.
That lived in the building.
That lived in the building. So he took off down there. One thing led to another, and we found out on him through the uncle and a suspicion that he'd gone down to Mexico. This is a death penalty case, a clear-cut death penalty case. If we've got someone in Mexico who we want, there's the obvious extradition situation that exists. However, Mexico, for political reasons or whatever, would not extradite a death penalty case. We found out what the village was. We've got a couple of people who had contacts through our department with the Mexican government who went down and met with the federales and told them what we had. And of course, they explained that we cannot extradite. We can't help you here because you have the death penalty, and this is a death penalty case. Anyhow, this went on for a while. We sent people into the village unbeknownst to him from the federales. They talked to the locals who didn't know anything about what had happened until it was explained to them in certain ways. If the federales had left Umberto by himself, the villagers finding out what had happened would have killed him.
Yeah, I was going to.
So one thing led to another, and details this time. No reason to go into details, but somehow Umberto ended up in Texas on the wrong side of the fence.
He was persuaded.
He ended up on the wrong side of the fence where we arrested him. And he came back. He gave me a complete confession. In fact, he took me on a walkthrough. That's why I know all of these things, because he took me on a walkthrough and showed me what he did. We videotaped the whole thing. He was, of course, convicted on 25 counts of murder, received 25 years to life for each one, for a total of 625 years in prison. So he's there for good.
He's there for a while.
Yeah.
What was the interrogation like? Did you have to get it out of him? Did he?
No,
I bet you he had. My opinion, I think he probably didn't expect killing, just a fire.
He's a young, wise-ass gangbanger,
yeah,
but he
he
wasn't so tough when he was in his village down there, and the villagers, the rest of his family found out what had happened to his family and all these other innocent people. And like I said, they would have killed him, and they would have buried him out in the desert somewhere, and that would have been the end of it.
Right.
But he was very happy that the federales came around one day and collected him, because he'd been dead if they hadn't. There was certain remorse, obviously, because of the confession. There was no problem with that. And then walking around showing me everything on video, he tape recorded everything. He'll have a long time to think about it.
What did he tell you the reason was? Was he pissed off and he just wanted to send a message to his uncle? He didn't want to torch the whole thing, did he?
Probably not. He wanted to get the uncle, obviously, because that's where he set the fire, right in front of the uncle's door, and it was on the mat. So in his pea brain, he probably figured that the mat will caught on fire. But the Dorothy Mae was a firebox ready to explode because of not just the backdraft. That was ironic that it hit at the same time, caused by the uncle coming through the rear door.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna show my uncle who's boss. Tell me what to do.
Well, that's part of it. If it hadn't gotten physical with the uncle, maybe not. But the uncle was just pissed off at all the gang graffiti. The uncle cared. He wanted to try to keep the place up. And the Dorothy Mae was full. I mean, they didn't have any rooms available or anything else. But it was a graffiti, and maybe if the uncle had handled it another way, I don't know. But the kid obviously wasn't thinking about consequences, nor what would happen if he started a fire under those circumstances. Yeah.
So I'm sure the fire department thought it was something else, maybe electrical. This is an old building. You would think logically something like that could happen. Did it take a long time to investigate it and figure out what happened?
Because I watch a lot of these documentaries. They see the fire. They can see it's an accelerant, gasoline, and they know pretty. Am I right?
Point of origin. Arson, point of origin. I can tell you that in minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially under these circumstances. They can tell you how it happened and everything else. These are really good investigators who investigate these types of things. And they know exactly what happened. And when you interview the manager, 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8, and there we go.
The reason I know this is because on a forensic file, which I'm addicted to, a fire chief in Glendale, as a story that happened a while ago, was starting fires everywhere, and that was sort of many deaths happened from that. Yeah, and it was the fire chief. Amazing that you remember this story because it was Glendale, and it was like, are you kidding me?
Did you get there soon enough where there were bodies there?
Oh, yeah. No, the coroner's office had their work cut out for them. You have to be photographed, and everything has to be done just like a crime scene.
Yeah.
Again, this is a death penalty situation, and when there's an arson involved, regardless of his intent. If there even was intent, he just wanted to get back at his uncle, and that's what his lawyers argued. But you've got that many people who died. I mean, he's going to pay the price, and he did.
You're in the building with the burnt bodies.
Well, yeah, there were several of them there, and the removal. They got to be photographed. Many of them were just lying and posing in mid stride, because they went into flames. I mean, they didn't get smoke knocked out by the smoke or anything else.
You got 1 second, and that's a tinderbox, right? It's all wood. It just
Yeah, it just blew
taken
up.
off. Yeah,
It blew up.
I'm sure that was a wake up call for the city for building codes and.
Well, yeah, but they did have the pone doors. The problem was perhaps the manager could explain to his tenants that what a pone door is. If there's ever a fire in here, I mean, this is what you're going to do.
Right.
And no one spoke to these people. Obviously, they just rented the rooms out, and that's what they were interested in, the bottom line.
Most of the sound stages everywhere, or like Universal Studios, got anything for films to be protected. I think we have one right here, Zeus, correct? That's a pune door.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Wow,
but the
so
ones-
that you can tell
Yeah.
that feels like it would be fireproof.
yeah, the ones
Oh,
at
yeah.
Universal Studio or anybody that has films, they've got something that I don't think fire can get through.
But they're not
They-
good forever. I mean, sooner or later, it's
Yeah.
going to, they say 30,
Yeah,
40
protect-
minutes of this particular ones. I don't know whether they improved them or what. Maybe
Yeah.
they have.
I thought Zeus just put that in there to keep his ex-girlfriends out. A lot of them are probably coming after you, Zeus.
Or because Zeus is so on fire. Hey, there you go, Zeus. That was for you.
Hey Tom,
Very
when,
cute,
when
very
did,
cute.
when did you start? When did you start LAPD?
1967.
1967.
I was only 11 years old, though.
Exactly. You're the first Super Bowl, by the way, 1967.
Green Bay.
And then, well, a pretty big case happens in 1969. Charles Manson, Helter Skelter. Obviously, that's big. Did that affect the whole department? Were you involved in any way?
No, I was not involved in that initially at all. I was working patrol at that time. But robbery homicide did handle that particular case.
Yeah.
was-
Have you watched the Netflix piece yet? I haven't.
Not on that one, but I know that the house, someone that I know has the house now, owns it, redid that out on La Cielo Drive.
Cielo Drive, yeah.
Yeah,
Not Cielo Drive.
Yeah.
Cielo Drive, yeah, and I have the coffee cup still with Cielo Drive. I refuse to drink out of it, but yeah, it's
Well, that was kind of interesting in the way they took off. L.A. had never really, the guys that handled that did what they could do, but it didn't really handle any of that much publicity. And it was interesting when the killers took off. What they did, there was a young reporter, and you probably might remember his name, you could probably find it, who was working the case and figured that if the killers killed here, they could have gone this way, or they could have gone. There was only a couple ways they could have gone, and one of them was right down Beverly Glen, and the other was down, forget the other name of the other street. Anyway, this young
Benedict
reporter
Canyon, maybe? No,
was
Benedict Canyon. Okay.
Benedict, so he went down Benedict Canyon, and he's thinking that if they're going down this way, and they might have thrown some evidence or something else before the cops could get to him, he's stopping his car and just looking over the cliff, and he's doing this and that. He discovered some bloody clothing down at the bottom of one of these cliffs. This reporter did. And he had a good story, right? But he also called the LAPD, who came out and took that, and that was a little embarrassing. But then they also found one of the guns off of Beverly Glen. A young kid did. So your crime scenes, the lesson there is your crime scene can go on forever,
Right.
and you don't stop here.
You know, this is when I was a young kid, but I remember when the Helter Skelter came out, the Vincent Bugliosi book, and we all watched as a family because it's 3 stations, ABC, CBS, NBC. So we're watching this, Tom, and it was just so fascinating. I said, this Vincent Bugliosi guy, boy, would I like to meet him. And sure enough, I met the guy. I know it's one of those.
Little
things.
did you know.
Little did I know that Bugliosi would become, a friend, an acquaintance that I would be this relationship with you. But I was like, oh my God, this Stephen Railsback. He played Manson, and then Bugliosi told me about the trial, and he was on my side and just said Marshall Clark handled you the wrong way, and he signed his book for me because he wrote a book on this.
I know the guy. I worked with him for a while.
Yeah,
and I helped him write that book.
I'm just telling you, it's a small world.
Yeah.
He was good to you, right? Or you guys were okay?
Oh
Friends?
yeah, great. He wrote me a really good
He was
book.
he wrote a page
Very nice,
intro
yeah.
to his book I'll have to bring it in to show you because I was.
He's a good guy.
This guy was out, and his wife, I think his name was Gail, and they used to go to the mansion, believe it or not, to have parties.
Hey,
We had a couple of cases with him, and I was a licensed PI, and I'm used to driving my car to these places. He flies to these places, so we flew out of Camarillo, I think, just to go up to do an interview. I said, it's kind of neat. You got your own plane.
That's the way to do
fly
it.
those
Right.
places.
Wow.
Make it easy.
So
He's a
this
pilot
is,
license?
This is a different. No, he just.
Oh,
we
he had
just-
a pilot.
He had a pilot, but this is a different level for me. Flying
Yeah.
to talk to somebody, we usually just drive.
Saves some
Yeah.
time, doesn't it? Make it a little
Takes
easier.
a lot of time. I don't
Yeah.
like flying though. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, so a serial killer, Tom has described this, having 2 or more murders committed by the same suspect at different locations with no apparent motive. Tom sent me 3 pages of serial killer cases. I counted it up, well over 300 victims. It's how prolific these killers were back in the day. Hillside Strangler, 1977. You were already busy working one of the Skid Row cases at the time, or you
Right.
could have been more involved with that one. Did these cases cross over? Were you sharing evidence? Did you have to go help them for a little bit? Were you involved in some capacity with Hillside?
There was always that. See, you don't know. Like I said, there were 16 people. We also had major crimes, so we had about 20-something people who could work these things. But like on the Hillside, you had 10 victims, and they all have to be background. I mean, I hate to say the tail wags the dog, but sometimes that's what happens, and that's where all the juice goes. I was working by myself on a Skid Row case, just me, and they had like 12 guys working the Hillside. I understand that, but nobody cares about the people on Skid Row. They do care about young girls getting kidnapped.
All girls
and
were killed on
brutalized.
Hillside, right?
And their nude bodies thrown all over the hillsides. I understand that because that's where the
Right.
publicity was, and that's where people's concern was. These people had a life. The transients of Skid Row really don't. But it was at a time when if you needed somebody, and when I identified a suspect on the Skid Row, I got all the people back.
Right.
So you were playing it off the cuff. You weren't. There's really nothing set in stone because you don't know what you have until you get it, quite
Right.
frankly, and then you have to be reactive.
Yep.
At what point in a serial killing, Tommy said there's 300 victims. At what point does a profiler get called when you guys kind of run out? When does like an FBI say we're going to get in and be a profile? Is it because it's a publicity case like the Hillside Strangler? They go, we want to get involved for publicity, or do you guys make the call and go, we need a
How
profiler?
about this? Never.
They're never.
You know why?
No.
Because they didn't have a profiling unit back then.
Do you believe that's a good?
We were the only ones that we did our own profiling through things like we already discussed and
Right.
previously, linking and MO and talking to people. And I developed I brought it the last time, a whole book on how you do these types of things
Right,
that I
so you're-
used. I went to work for DOJ when I retired. And one of the things that I taught was serial killing investigation. But I had to put together all of the stuff that I did over the years. That was the basis for the instruction. All the screw ups, the mistakes, put everything together, and in the end, what do you have? What's the best way to handle these particular cases? And that's why I put that thing together. And I did that with DOJ, and at the time they didn't have this profiling unit back in Virginia.
Yeah, profiling probably had to start like in the 90s, like 1990 or so.
I think one of the first ones was Ted
Bundy. Yeah.
that they did, and I've got that file. It's a big, thick file, and I think it was the first one they spent time on. The FBI has the time, they have the resources, they have the people, of course, and they can do all of these things. So today, when you have a serial killer, you don't have as many today, but you still have them out there.
Mm-hmm.
You get them involved as early as you can. I'm the type that I'm going to keep what I have close to the vest, but I'll take any help I can get on any of these cases. Back then, we didn't have that, and I've described to you some of the cases we had. It was just me and a clipboard and a body, the same with everybody else. We didn't have communications. We didn't have DNA. We didn't have a lot of these advanced systems that they had today, and they had 3 times as many murders then.
Gosh, I'll just read through some of these.
Yeah.
Cato, it's gonna shock you. Okay, so the Manson clan murders, that was 9. Skid Row slasher, 12 victims. The trash bag killer, 21 victims. Hillside Strangler, 10. Skid Row stabber, 11. You know, a lot of these we've heard of, right? The Freeway Strangler, I hadn't heard of that
And these
one.
are all kind of going at the same years.
Well,
right?
yeah, in the same
It's
era, in the
like-
late 70s,
Yeah.
80s is when they were all going down. The Freeway Strangler, 32 victims. How about this one? I'd never heard of this. The old lady killer in 2 years, 34 victims. He would stalk these women, have trophies with them, stage them.
Brandon Thalmer was one of the two of them.
So
Brandon Thalmer.
he would kill older women.
It's called the old lady killer.
He'd stake them out at elderly women at supermarkets and church and things like this, and he'd follow them home, come back later that night, break in, take something from her.
Oh my God!
And kill him.
And
that was L.A.
Yes,
Brandon
this is all
Thalmer
in
was
L.A.
And you worked that case.
I worked on it. I wasn't the investigator, but I
but
worked some of the crime scenes. It was the Brandon Thalmer case.
The Grim Sleeper, 10 victims. Michael Hughes, 8 victims. Samuel Little, another serial killer, 5 known victims, maybe more.
This is just L.A.
This is just
Some of
LA.
these little one crossed. He copped to 92 murders.
God.
From here to Florida.
Everybody knows the Night Stalker. What were you doing? This is 1985, spring, summer, 1985, 11 victims, whatever it was, 13, random, all over LA. This is all LA County, so you got the sheriffs involved. They pretty much took over
They
one.
were the lead. Gil Carrillo was the lieutenant in charge. A hell of a guy, really a great guy.
He did a great
Talked
job.
to him.
Yeah. Did you have any involvement?
Well, our unit did. I
Okay.
did not have any direct involvement. I think we had 2 of the victims, 1 or 2 in our area. But if it starts in one jurisdiction, that's again where communications comes in, where we learned the hard way that you need to communicate these types of things. You got to talk to other jurisdictions, because when a serial killer kills, some of them know, as in the Kearney case, that cops don't communicate. So he would kidnap his victims, say in MacArthur Park, and he'd dump them out in San Bernardino somewhere, and then nobody knew. They couldn't connect them. They had the linking, but they didn't realize that maybe you ought to talk to somebody else, because they don't confine
Sure.
to this area, and cops had to learn the hard way.
I mean, it's overwhelming to think how many were operating at the same time. And then you think maybe it's one doing these over here, but then you find out it's a totally different killer that's working this area. Does one stand out, or 1 or 2, as the most evil? I think of these guys like the ones abducting the kids in Orange County, the Toolbox.
Yeah.
I mean, just you can't even like describe what they were doing to these kids, and to think you would pick those victims and what the parents were going through, and the panic in the communities, because what are you gonna do? You know, your kids are out playing, they're at the beach, they're hanging out, and anybody could be a victim. Does any one of these stand out to you? I mean, they're all horrible.
Well, looking at victimology, I don't want to. A human life is a human life, but people do look at like these 3 different Skid Row killings with, I don't know, 35 or 40 victims. Most people look at those transients as people who have just given up on life regardless. You compare that to young boys who get picked up and slaughtered, or young girls, college years, who get kidnapped and raped and just brutalized and then dumped. So the empathy is going to go with the young girls, every time. As far as when I'm looking at them, I think the Orange County at the scorecard killer, Randy Kraft, supposedly kept account of all of his victims, and there were like 67 of them. You can compare that to the Hillside, and there were 10. So if you kill 6 or 7 times as many, maybe that makes you worse. I don't know. And who knows how many they actually killed regardless. Right. It's what he did to these young boys. He tortured before he killed them. Kearney, he just shoot him in the head. He was a necrophiliac. He'd shoot him in the head, then have sex with the body, and then he would dissect the body, throw them into garbage cans, and dump those along freeways. They're out in the middle of nowhere in San Bernardino County. So they all had different ways that they handle these things. They're all sociopaths, high-level sociopaths. This is what they get off on, and they don't give it a second thought. So I would say, and then the Toolbox, I mean, these guys were sick. This is right in the middle of all of these Bittaker and Norris. They would pick up young girls and just have their way with them and torture them. And the last one they got was an L.A. case out in the San Fernando Valley, just outside of San Fernando. And they picked this young girl up, I think she was 15 or 16, and drove around with her in this van. Norris was driving and Bittaker was in the back, tape recording him torturing this young girl. That tape was played in court. and people were screaming, and women were crying, and everything. The viciousness of this animal, this Bittaker, torturing this young girl and putting it all on tape, and then finally killing her. I mean, they had 5 victims that we know of. It's just this depravity. If you're just going to kill somebody and get on, fine. But most serial killers, that's not enough.
Tell me the death penalty.
Oh yeah, they're both dead. They both died.
But did they
But
get,
No, the last,
No,
the
they,
last.
they didn't get convicted. They didn't get a death sentence. This is California.
Yeah.
Cato, come on.
yeah,
should
don't
be
do that.
automatic, man. And we should all be able to watch it. I would love to
Well,
watch
that
these guys
happened.
tortured to death. These
That
killers.
happened. My partner was at one of them, and
Was-
the Freeway Killer.
The Freeway
Bonham.
Strangler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was the last one to die by lethal injection.
And Bob
Or-
was there to see it.
Wow.
Not
So
only handled the case, but 18 years later, or whatever it was, he's there as a witness to see it.
did he insist? He definitely wanted to be there.
No, he was invited.
Okay.
And Bob wanted to see it through because he was so close to the case. He had a couple of young sons at the same time, and he lived about 1 mile from one of the Bonham's body dumps.
yeah,
And his kids were these types, his sons, like growing in their 50s now, would hitchhike to the beach. And he found out about that and got a little upset with them, and especially after a body drop. He lived out on the other side of, where was it? Not the Glendale Freeway, way out.
La Cañada, that area.
East, just north of there. I'll figure. Anyway, it's irrelevant. There was a body dump within a mile of his house,
Pasadena.
and his boys were hitchhiking to the beach. So he sent them down and said,
Yeah, you
"I'll
get-
take you to the beach anytime you want, but no
Yeah.
hitchhiking, because that's where Bonin got off. He
Mhm.
picked these kids up."
Yeah.
I'm all for capital punishment as long as it's not too severe.
Yeah, right.
How about the guy? Where was it? Arkansas or firing squad a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
happened. No, weeks ago. It just
that's
happened.
the way they do it.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
his choice, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he heard what happens on lethal injections and
Yeah.
I would say lethal injection. He just puts you to sleep.
lights out.
What happened to Bonin? He just went to sleep.
Not nearly harsh enough for him.
Yeah.
Not
Of
nearly.
course, if you kill somebody, you kill somebody.
Eye for an eye.
But why go out of your way to torture
I know.
and ruin them psychologically, and they don't know for sure what's going to happen, and then you make them suffer.
I would think the last serial killer would probably be bind, torture, kill, the BTK killer. I would think that was probably the.
Well, no, you had that guy in
No.
Long Island or in New York that was
Early
killing the
days.
prostitutes a few years ago that was just arrested.
Yeah, well, that might be one exception. A lot of the prostitute killings were just strangulation,
Yeah.
and just to kill them with no torture or anything else. So there are those too. But the types differ. There's a lot of sick people, and you're looking at this many in this particular area. How many more hundreds of serial killers are there? Not just in the U.S., they're all over.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been for a long time.
Of the serial cases you worked on, did they all keep memorabilia? Did they all? Because that's the big thing: keeping a chain, keeping a license, keeping
Souvenirs, we call it
souvenirs. Yeah, souvenirs.
Not all of them, but
That's the big thing, though.
it is. That was one of the little freakish things. You have to take something. The stabber did that to his victims, and that's one reason we identified his victims by what he was carrying around. Some of them do that. Some of them don't. Some they just do it for the thrill of the kill. Some of them do it to pose their victims. Look at Ted Bundy. I've got a little quiz I used to give, and I'd list a bunch of victims, and I think I showed you last time. Try to link these murders and tell me how many suspects you have. Here's the MO, and here's the victimology, and go over this, and I give this to the students, and they'd say, well, there must be 3 because it changes here and it goes there, and these are all the same, and this is all the same. And then I say, no, and in the end, Ted Bundy killed every one of these. Well, why do the MOs differ? Ted Bundy wasn't stupid. He was a very bright guy, in fact. He realized that cops are getting close. Change your MO, because that's what they're looking to link these cases.
Right.
So if I change my MO, they're going to turn left, and I'm going to go right. So they know these things. They know to go outside the jurisdiction, like Kearney. He says the cops in L.A., they're not going to miss a bunch of transients out of MacArthur Park, and the San Bernardino sheriffs are going to find them out in the desert. They're not going to know how to do anything to do it. Kearney had to turn himself in and cop out to this after his family talked him into doing it. Otherwise, he might still be out there.
And then you have all these victims and then their families that have to live with this forever too. Just the mental anguish.
Sure. There's more than one victim.
Yeah, without a doubt. Anything we haven't covered on the serial killer? Because we want to ask you a few other questions about some other cases. I think we've covered it pretty well.
Like I say, we could be here all night.
I
if you
know,
want.
I know.
mean,
We could dive into each one of these could be their own segment.
Yeah.
Wow, Tom, your work is it's amazing what you've done. Kept put a lot of bad guys away and kept a lot of people safe.
Well, I think the great thing is that Tom still gets phone calls from people to help.
Yeah.
I mean, you still get at least some calls of what's going on.
I don't know. I just feel connected.
Sure.
And I don't want. Well, you do it too. You do charity work
Oh, yeah.
because
Completely.
you don't get paid a dime.
Yeah.
You do it because you give a damn.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with giving a damn.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah.
And
How'd you
I think paying forward is the best thing to do in life.
How did you like working for the feds when you were at the DOJ? Did you feel you got some good work done there?
I've worked with the feds in several cases, including Simpson, and I'm extremely impressed by the federal people. I have never had any problems with them. They're outstanding at what they do, and they have a sense of humor. They realize that, like at a murder scene, they're not murder cops. Basically, that's a jurisdictional thing. They don't handle them unless you want their assistance in something like the behavioral science unit on a serial killer, or the footwear impressions. The Simpson case with the Bruno Mollies, they did an outstanding job identifying those footwear impressions. They have probably the best footwear impression library in the world, and they got to work on that, and they worked their ass off. And so I have nothing but good things to say about the feds.
Yep. I mean, because like I said, I watched so much true crime.
Right.
To see on FBI how they can tell which tire, the molds of tires, just getting a mold, getting the shoe mold. I mean, and it only gets better every day. Technology and time are just.
Well, it's the
something
dedication of their people. They joined to be cops, to be FBI agents, and do the job. They didn't join for the pension or whatever else. And they weren't I'm not going to get into the type of people that get hired to do those jobs that no longer have jobs anymore, but a lot of those types of people were hired just to be hired, and they didn't do anything.
Right.
You want someone who's going to do the job they were hired to do, and back when I worked with the FBI, they had a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, meritocracy.
It
best,
works.
The best, the best.
It's always has been, always will be.
And it should be.
Yeah. All right. So solving crimes is in your blood. It's what you do. You're retired. You've been retired for a while. Are you an amateur detective now, Tom? Maybe not getting the paycheck, but when you look at some of these big cases, and I think a lot of people would be fascinating in these ones that are in the news, like take JonBenét Ramsey, which is old, almost 30 years old, and still no killer is found. There was a pretty good doc. We had the producer of that documentary on a few months ago. Yeah. And that's another tragic one. It's so horrible. And there was, I don't know, I'd love to get your opinion on the Boulder Police Department and maybe what you think happened there.
Well, the Boulder Police Department did what they could. You can't always blame the cops. It's kind of handy to do. Now, I've worked a couple hundred murder cases, and every time you work another one, you're going to learn something new. You can make mistakes. Everybody does. If there's one murder case I've ever looked at where I didn't do something that was a mistake or they thought someone would have done differently, then I'm not looking hard enough. This is an imperfect world, and if you're inexperienced, experience is the best teacher, period. If you're in Boulder Police Department and you've worked 2 cases in 10 years, you probably don't have a lot of experience. You don't know exactly how to look at someone or do something. You learn things just like you guys did, what you do for a living. You're good at it, but you do a lot of it, and you're good at it because you like it. You have experience, and you'll learn something from this today. You learned something last week. You learn something next week. Yeah. It's the same for police work. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. If you have a fascination for it, you're probably going to be pretty good at doing it. So it just depends. All cases are different. Now, the Benét Ramsey case, there was a certain level of inexperience. You don't have a lot of murders in Boulder. I would look, and I'm not privy to all of the details. If there's anything that hasn't been released, I would assume and hope that there are certain pieces of evidence known only to the Boulder police. I don't know. I didn't really, I'm not privy to it. I am privy, though, to one of the people who looked at the case who thinks that there's a family member involved.
Wow.
And is a very well-known criminalist. I don't think I should even mention his name.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I
But
can
he
totally
and
see
I,
that.
I respect this individual who looked at the evidence, wasn't employed to do that, but a publicity case like that, and you look at how could something like this happen and no one knew about it. But this person believes it was a family member, and
Did he explain to you why he thought that? And did you believe him? Did it make sense?
No names, but you can just say.
well, yes, but details weren't discussed because they didn't have a lot of details. But if you look at the so-called players, you look at the family, you look at the evidence that's known, footprints in the snow, entry to the home, where the body was found, how she was killed, relationships between family members, I would have a lot of questions that I haven't heard answered. And they would be directed towards one person.
Male,
Wow.
Male or female?
Well,
Okay.
I don't want to give that away.
Well-
I think you can figure it
Okay.
out.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I have a theory, but I won't say it on air because I met someone from Secret Service
That's shocking. That's
about
unbelievable.
this, but I'm going to tell it to you after.
Tom, you mentioned inexperience with the Boulder Police Department, and with that inexperience comes not handling crime scene properly, where maybe you can't get the evidence later, or they screw up early where it blows their chance to get a conviction.
Listen, all you can do is all you can do.
Right.
Okay. When I look at a case, when I know all of the evidence I think I do, I look for exculpatory evidence. We talked about this in the Simpson case. You want to know what your enemy is. You want to know where the problems are before anything else so you can deal with them early on. You hate to see somebody acquitted because of some exculpatory evidence that you didn't find. Simpson case is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably one of a 10% murder case where there's virtually nothing of a substantive nature that's exculpatory. Nothing. Everything goes in one direction. That's very, very rare. So if you're handling a case, and perhaps they didn't realize that in Boulder because they hadn't been around that long, you want to find out what's against you, what the exculpatory stuff is, before you can handle anything. That's what you're going to have to deal with in court.
When you say it goes one way, you mean everything points to him.
Points to him as
Yeah,
points to
exculpatory.
O.J. Simpson as the
Right.
party who committed
Right.
these crimes. Every little bit of substantive evidence. There's always circumstantial evidence that you have to accept. Does it mean anything? Maybe yes, maybe no. That's why it's circumstantial. If there's 2 or 3 things in these cases, you expect that. If there's 15, 20, or 25 pieces of circumstantial evidence that all go over here, you better take another look.
Right.
And so then
It's all-
it reads up. But there's little things like that. What I learned, and it took a long time to learn it, the first thing I think about when I come to a crime scene is court.
What's going to hold up?
Because
in
I'm going to
court?
be the first witness. The cop is always the first one explaining the crime scene. So I better remember everything that I'm
Right.
looking at right now. Well, how do you do that? Well, you start taking notes, you
Yeah.
talk to people, you take photographs. Now we videotape everything, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
The more of that, the better, because you're going to be attacked because you're a cop and you screw up. All
Right.
cops screw up, right?
Right.
And some of them plant evidence, right? Yeah, well, does that mean that there's evidence planted here? No, but show me the evidence of that. And that happened, of course, in any case where you have a lot of evidence, like Simpson, you're going to have that type of an argument.
Right.
It put the cops on trial. It's very effective.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got one big one coming up this summer, and we'll end with this, the Idaho killings. And I don't know how close you followed that, but exculpatory, right? You got Brian Kohberger, this one guy that it seems to point at, and he's got a public defender. It's in Idaho, inexperienced homicide detectives there. They don't have murders there in that part of Idaho. So who knows what happened, what they did or didn't do right or wrong there. But any thoughts on that one, Tom?
Yeah, my favorite expression. When all else fails, go with the evidence. There's a lot of it. And do you have anything exculpatory? What other suspects do you have?
Right. And I think this person, whoever did the killing, this person could be could have the brain of the serial killer, of a
Right.
person that wants to get away with it, killing 4.
I would assume that they'd be looking at that. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's definitely a mass killer, killing 4.
Well, motive is not necessary to prove murder. We all know that. But in this particular case, if you have a serial killer, you'd like to know the motive. And you look at the motive in this case.
We don't know.
Strange, no.
Yeah.
No.
there's
He
no
had
mo-
interactions with one of them at the restaurant that she worked at.
The only thing people are saying is he's criminal law. Maybe he's trying to commit a perfect crime. We don't know.
You don't know.
There's so many
but
theories.
This is one where it might be important to know motive, but again, you don't need motive to prove murder.
We might be going down doing our show live.
Yeah, we're going to go
during
out
the
to
trial.
Idaho.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're going to take a road trip, Tom.
Do it in the summer.
Exactly. That's what I told
That's what
Cato.
I think it is summer.
When does it start?
It's June is what it is, but it looks like the defense is going to delay. We don't know.
You're not gonna-
Although they just had one thing, the judge threw out one of their saying the genealogy under the nails. They're going to use it. They tried to not use it.
Oh, you have to use that.
Yeah. Well, the defense
press-
said there was the way they gathered was not legal. How they got the
Well, of course
through
that's
through the what's that site that like 25 and
23andMe.
yeah, one of those things. They said they weren't they should never been allowed.
well,
use
that's
it.
the defense. That's what they do, and that's all
but
they
I
have.
think
You
I
gotta look
think
at
they
that, too.
lost that from what I read last.
You ought to see it. Well, you're not. Nobody's going to talk to you. The cops aren't going to talk to you. Not
Yeah.
before trial.
Oh no, but
They
You
tore
know,
the house
the-
down too, which is strange.
yeah, I think that's the strangest.
Why would you tear your crime scene down before court?
Makes no sense. They said it was an
Makes
eyesore.
zero
in the city.
sense.
It
Eyesore.
doesn't make for the town.
Yeah.
I still can't believe
To me, that's the biggest thing so far in this case. Why would you do that?
yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
grounds for something. Maybe
Yeah.
a mistrial.
No kidding.
It's
It always
I've never
happens
heard
in the
of
small
who-
towns.
Well,
Yeah.
whoever
Again, experience.
Exactly.
and who said we get to tear it down? The people that owned the home. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
No,
The court
city.
should have ruled on that early on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
probably
it
the
should have been
university had a big
secured.
say in that too. It scares the students. It freaks them out.
I
seeing that.
smell. I smell a road trip, and Tom's coming. Shotgun.
Tom, we'll get a private plane and take you out for a
Okay.
day or two.
Thanks
We'll
again,
see.
man. Tom.
All right. Well, hey,
Love ya.
this has been awesome. How about some comments? Let us know how much you appreciate Tom Lange being all four of these episodes. It was great, Tom. Really
I
appreciate
enjoyed it. I enjoyed
Yeah.
talking about
love
these
it.
things, and hopefully people will wake up and say, maybe I did take a harder look at a lot of these things.
Right.
Before, it's how does the movies play these up, and they're not always accurate.
No, exactly. Not even close a lot of times. So
Every feature film is from some sort of a murder that actually happened, and they just kind of embellish and write their own stuff in.
yeah. And so many of the cases you worked on, you've seen movies or TV shows on them. You got to be
Yeah,
sitting
it's-
back going, I can't believe. Nah, that's not how it happened.
No.
Yeah.
Story's not a story without conflict.
Right. All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Well, this was awesome.
pleasure.
All right. So, hey, throw it in the comments. If we bring Tom back, we'd love to have him again. What would you like to have him talk about next time? So,
Love it.
let's get you involved here. All right, follow us on social media. Make sure you listen to us on our audio podcast. We want to crank that up big time. If you're new to the show, let's subscribe. Happy to have you, Zeus. Thanks for hanging out here, man. Good job on the paint job, by the way. Tom, you notice Zeus did a nice job in here. He's like an interior designer
Yeah,
as
did a
well.
good job.
Yeah, good job. Got
Man
the
of many
fireproof
talents.
doors just in case someone tries to
DIY,
come at
so
us with a
man,
blowtorch or something.
Man of many talents.
DIY.
All right,
By
the
the
one
way,
and only Cato Kalin.
Thank you so
the
much.
one and only
Hey,
Tom
hey,
Lange.
guys.
Love you, Tom. Thank you,
I'm
man.
Tom
Thank you.
Zenner. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you very, very soon.